In this video, I will review the Game of Thrones HBO series, and the reason that I want to review it is because it represents one of the most prolific Gnostic narratives that's been used throughout history to counter the Bible. It's basically about the competition between the bloodlines for the Iron Throne. And this is it. Iron representing the Roman Empire in the statue in the Babylonian Emperor Nebuchadnezzar's dream, or the dragon in the legs you see here. But the Game of Thrones was popularized in an HBO series based on books by the author J.R.R. Martin, who they call as the American Tolkien, who definitely had occult bloodline, secret society knowledge, or either they used his name as the author. And I'll go over some details about him in my video titled GOT for Game of Thrones. And those books and this show is a perfect example of what Gary Wayne talks about on interviews and in his book, because most of these allegories center around dragons as the patriarch representing Satan or the seraphim, and fairies as the matriarch originating with the Tuatha De Danann, whose parent god is Danu, which represents both the dragon and fairy allegory represent the Antichrist bloodline. And I went into that in more detail in my video titled Dragons and Fairies. And we do see that allegory of fairies and dragons in the Game of Thrones, along with so many more occult narratives and storylines, which I'll go over in this video. Because they tell the truth in art, literature, and movies, even if it's occulted or obscured. And I'm not Gnostic, and I'm not saying that I believe any of this, but it's what the elites believe, or at least what they use as their MO to rule. They weave it into history and even combine it with the biblical stories and bloodlines. And they may actually believe it. You know how some of the tribes believe they descend from serpent creatures from the constellation Draco? The only difference is that these people, these elite royals, have a lot of power and influence in the world, and they get that in part by using witchcraft. And I believe we use all of this eventually to deceive and conquer the world, which is why I do these videos. Not saying that they're going to use the Game of Thrones to conquer the world, but they'll use witchcraft in the narrative. And speaking of conquest, that is the main goal of the heroine of the series, or the protagonist, I guess, for most of this series, Daenerys Targaryen. And this is her, the mother of dragons. She says throughout the series that the Iron Throne is her birthright. She got a very satanic Luciferian attitude going on. And the name Daenerys Targaryen I mentioned before in my Game of Thrones video seems to allude to the tribe of Dan, Tartarus, and the Tuatha De Danann. And she does fit the fairy allegory with the light hair, and her supernatural magical power is being resistant to fire. She cannot be burned. So she's a goddess-like superhuman who is princess and becomes queen. But remember, fairy is a type of spirit with magical powers, or a demon. And she rides a white horse, and eventually she rides a dragon like the Solomonari. But they play her as the heroine even though she's clearly hell-bent on conquest. One of her quotes is, "I will take what is mine, with fire and blood I will take it." But she's very good at using rhetoric to get people to worship her and fight for her birthright and promising them freedom from slavery. But in reality, they actually become more enslaved when they follow her, even though they don't realize it. And she actually manages to convince some of the other characters that she will unite the 7 kingdoms and save the world. And I gotta admit, in this series, she is very convincing. I was not saved when I first watched this, and I had no idea what was really going on, and I was rooting for her. I was. And in the series, she is the daughter of the Mad King, who was slain before it begins. And who was known historically as the Mad King? Charles VI of France. And I did a video about him called Made of Glass, since part of his psychosis was thinking he was made of glass. And that psychosis is definitely indicative of demonic possession. So he was the Mad King of France for 40 years, beginning in 1380. And he was an Anjou and Bourbon bloodline, which are high AC bloodline candidate families. And I'm not sure in the series which of his daughters that Daenerys is supposed to represent, but it's got to be either Isabella or Catherine, because both of them were child brides and queens of England. Isabella was married when she was 6 years old to a relative, and Catherine was a Tudor, and from her lineage came Elizabeth I, otherwise known as the Fairy Queen, who had that dress with the snake eating the apple. So Daenerys could be either one of those, I'm not sure which. But at the beginning, Dany was sold and married at a young age to a tribal king called Drogo, and Drogo just means dragon. And throughout the series, there's the concept of marriage of the elite class to form alliances. And Khal Drogo is a Scythian leader of a tribe, and Khal is a reference to the Khan bloodline, definitely, since Khan refers to the kings of the nomadic tribes of the Eurasian steppe, and representative of the dispersion of the Medo-Persian Empire of Iran from Babylonia. So this would make sense that he was Drogo or dragon, and he gives Daenerys much of her authority to rule. And her dragon eggs that she nurtured and hatched became the dragons that gave her her power and great authority. So that's the Luciferian dragon fairy explanation. But what are some of the other occult themes? There's a concept repeated that the two pillars of the world are known as the crown and the faith. But when they say faith, they're referring to religion. And I'll talk about their religions later. When they're referring to it, it's clear that they want to use this to control people, like this crown and the faith, you see. But most of the faith that they refer to is the faith of the seven gods, the old and the new. Old being the parent gods, and the new being their offspring in the pantheon or the council of gods. It's very pagan. The concept of seven referring to the fallen is often referred to in occult literature and art. And I want to look a little bit deeper into that concept of the seven, because I believe it's part of Satan's counterfeit. In the series, they say repeatedly that the seven are one. And this is an occult philosophy. Agrippa was a 16th century occult writer from London who wrote about the nature of spirits. And according to his book, Olympic Spirits, from ancient Greek religion, hold provinces in ritual magic and govern an epoch of 490 years. And they include the seven major deities of the Greek pantheon, which is attributed to a planet, a sigil, a list of powers, and legions of spirits under their command. And examples of the Olympic spirits are listed here, and they have these names I'm not going to go over, but they correspond to planets. So Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. And those planets correspond to degrees of initiation in Mithraism. And Mithraism was a Roman cult religion in the Roman Empire. And it's a religion carried forward from Iranian Zoroastrianism from Babylon. And these planets correspond to ancient earthly oracle sites with high harmonic resonances. The Order of the Dragon, which is the Druids and later the Templars, established Gothic cathedrals at these locations as a pilgrimage of enlightenment. And that was referred to as the Lactodorum, or the Great North Road, and it was reflected in the Milky Way. So the moon was St. James Cathedral in Spain, Mercury was Toulouse Cathedral in France, Venus, Orleans Cathedral in France, the Sun was Chartres Cathedral in France, Mars was Notre Dame in France, Jupiter was Amiens in France, and Saturn was Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland. And our planets are named after this, still. The International Astronomical Union still follows this pattern when naming moons, stars, etc. So our world is ruled by those who follow the fallen religion, no doubt about it. And now, speaking of sigils, in the series they refer to flags and banners as sigils. In the series they call them sigils, which have the heraldry of each bloodline house. And I'm just showing some of these here. See, here you have the dragon, the wolf, the lion, the deer, and then you even have a Rosicrucian one down here. Rose being the symbolism for Rosicrucian. And you know how these elites, they speak to each other in symbols, we've noticed? Well, this is demonstrated in the episode scene where one of the queens is pretending to be religious, but in front of the religious leaders because they had come to power. But then she, on the down low, passes her grandmother a picture of a rose, speaking without speaking, that she's really all about the crown and not about religion at all. And I said before that symbols or sigils are frequently used on flags, and this is demonstrative of that also. And in the intro to the series that they show, they always show a flat earth map, first of all, but they also keep showing this wheel within a wheel over and over, like we see in the depictions of Ezekiel wheel in the Bible a lot of times. And in one of the episodes, Daenerys says that she's not going to stop the wheel, she's going to crush it. Also in this series, you have this concept of watchmen on the wall, and they're guarding this ice wall at the edge of the kingdoms, which represents Antarctica on a flat earth map. And the creatures beyond the wall are all White Walkers, the undead, who the elites in the series try to unite to defeat later on in the series. And other occult concepts in the series are the use of sexual blackmail, eunuchs, or castrated males as sort of a priest spy, which we see. This is also part of pagan religion still today, definitely. And apparently the eunuch was used by the royals as spies in the past historically, and also to look over the royal harems. Daenerys uses an army of emasculated men to fight her wars as well. There's a theme of incest between brothers and sisters who are married, lovers with offspring. There's tree worship, with the trees being alive in some scenes. There's the Lord of the Light, with the Scarlet Woman, which represents Lucifer, the many-faced god, who made masks off skinning dead people's faces, and I think that's a representation of the Luciferian religion because it comes in all different packages or masks. There's also the concept of satanic ritual torture and abuse in MK Ultra, with Ramsay ritually torturing and splitting the person of Theon Greyjoy. And also throughout the series we see the theme of knights heavily, where the knights will do anything for the royals and give their lives to serve them. And it's supposed to be an honorable, profession. That's how it's characterized, but that's just rhetoric, because what they're positioned to do for the elites is in no way honorable, especially nowadays. See my playlist titled Knights of the Crown. And I'm sure there's a lot that I've missed, certainly, but I think this is enough to make the point. And in the end, the Mother of Dragons, who is hell-bent on conquest, burns King's Landing, where the Iron Throne is. She burns it to the ground. So she took what was hers with fire and blood. Thanks for listening.